I just I know you can't have a lot of dialogue on something that's not in the agenda, but I wanted to bring something forward with the hopes that you'll put it on a coming agenda. I was at a meeting out in Nantucket, and there's a representative of the United States Department of Agriculture. And she was there talking about a project that a homeowner is doing. And in conversation with her, she was telling us that the USDA has revamped their definition of farming to include such things as eelgrass growing, dune grass plantings and growing. And she said, you know, it'd be really nice if you could get the Nantucket County Conservation District revitalized or revamped again, because there was one, and that's who we, meaning the USDA, works with. So obviously I didn't know anything about it. So I did some research on the web and found out that, yes, indeed, in 1949, we did in fact have a County Conservation District Commission. It doesn't replace or abscond with any of the duties and roles of the local commission. And so in digging through a little bit more, there was a phone number associated with the thing in 1949, and it resided at 188 Nantucket Road, which we all know is the DPW. And so I don't know, when it went away. But further research, I was able to reach the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Districts and talked with the executive director there. And so she was very excited to think that anybody would even call to ask about this again. But she brought up the fact that we as a county are missing out on the opportunity to apply for federal monies for projects such as dune grass plantings, eelgrass revitalization, oyster growth, and shellfish propagation. So I bring this forward and hope that you would put it on the agenda so staff has a chance to do some research on it. You can have a chance to look at it. From the little bit of conversation I've had with the executive director and stuff, it sounds like there's some real possibilities to help some of the projects that we're trying to do on island. So that's my pitch.
Well,
and
well received. I like that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
all right. And there's also I just sent Representative Fernandez and Senator Sear, I think his name is. There's two bills that evidently that this Conservation District Association has done that was introduced, and it's to do with clean soils or helping clean soils or whatever. So I don't know what the status of that is, and I've asked also that we could find that out so that you folks know what's going on.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the public on items not being heard this evening? Okay, seeing not, the following items are continued under notice of intent. 46 Shimo Pond Road Nominee Trust at 46 Shimo Pond Road is continued until January 22nd. Great State Properties LLC at 92 Washington Street Extension is continued until January 22nd. Under request for determination, Mid-Island Service Limited Partnership at 41 and 43 Sparks Ave is continued until January 22nd. Under certificates of compliance, Rock Ganella, trustee of the North Nominee Trust, 73 Easton Street, is continued until January 22nd. Nantucket Wheelhouse LLC at 13 Massachusetts Avenue is continued until January 22nd. And then Alice Rochat at 100 Low Beach Road is continued until January 22nd. So with that, we'll get going under the public hearing. Notices of intent, Bonnie Sacerdote, trustee at 19 Kimball Avenue.
There's only 4 to see this film.
Thank you. For the record, Paul Santos and Chloe Coggins from Nantucket Surveyors. This is an application you heard at the previous meeting. It is 19 Kimball Avenue. It's an application, notice of intent for permanent sand drift fencing at the base of the coastal dune, coastal bank interface. At that last meeting, we had received our DEP file number. We had not received correspondence from NHESP. That is now been issued. It is been submitted to staff, and it's the same set of conditions that we saw on the previous two projects abutting this. If you remember, I think 17 Kimball and 9 Kimball, we had the same section of sand drift fencing. At that time, NHESP had come up with a few modifications to the sand drift fencing layouts that we had been using. That was incorporated into this design. So again, their permit is issued subject, it's a permit with essentially a no-take subject to conditions. Conditions being limiting the time of work, time of year the work can be done for the plovers, reporting requirements as far as installation and inspections go from our end and the contractor. And it's the standard conditions that we received for the previous two abutting projects. And again, this is a limited amount. I think it's 91, if I remember correctly here, 91 linear feet of sand drift fencing in front of the Sacerdote property. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions from the commission? Any questions from the public? Jeff, do we have everything we need to close? Paul, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Is there a motion?
Motion approved. Motion approved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. All right, moving on to Patrick S. Keating at 49 Red Barn Road.
Okay, again, thank you, Paul Santos and Chloe Coggins from Nantucket Surveyors. Again, this is another application that was heard at the last meeting. This application is for property owner Patrick Keating, in which we are voluntarily moving the existing dwelling away from an eroding coastal bank out in the west end of the island, essentially out at Red Barn Road. At that time, we had not heard from NHESP. We have received correspondence from them. Essentially, it's a no-take and a no adverse impact under the Wetlands Protection Act. This has subsequently gone to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and they've also approved the move, as we are asking for diminished side yard setbacks in order to keep the structure as far away from the eroding bank as we can. The one thing that the Zoning Board of Appeals did ask for was that we show a couple of parking spaces, or show how the driveway would be relocated. That has been added to the plan and is shown on this plan here. Essentially, we're coming to the westerly side and placing 2 parking spaces along the back side of the structure. That was a requirement or requested by the ZBA. Again, this is setbacks to a coastal dune and the eroding coastal bank. No waivers are required from this commission with regard to the location of the structure. And happy to answer any questions that you may have. And again, this one here, the septic system is already in place, and we replaced the septic system a few years back, and that's as far away as it can go now, and there's no impact on that at this point.
I'm forgetting, was it a basement or is it on slab?
It's on piers or piling.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, are you gonna submit another plan with the driveway shown? or-
It is. I did submit one.
This one has
Yeah,
it.
no, it's right here,
102.
David. Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah, I
This
don't
just
think
came,
it's
this came about just recently from the ZBA, so as soon as I got word from the ZBA, in fact, their plan,
Oh, I see.
yeah, it's just, so.
Any-
And that would just be a dirt
Yep.
gravel, nothing.
And I think last time you agreed to, remove any material that might come up as erosion continues.
Yeah, they'll be complete, the old septic system has already been, the old tank, the old leach pit, that's already been removed. We're basically, remove anything off there and then loam seed and just stabilize the, yeah.
Any other questions from the commission? Questions from the public? Jeff, do we have everything we need to close?
We do.
Would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Is there a motion?
There is.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. So moving on, thank you, to John J. Moeller at 10 Monomoy Creek Road.
Do you want to do those next two together, 10 and 12?
Okay, and Monomoy Creek Road Nominee Trust at 12 Monomoy Creek Road.
So just a reminder, this is where we did our field viewing this past Monday. All right, Brian. Thank you. Good evening. Brian Madden from LEC Environmental Consultants. At the last meeting, we were continued waiting for natural heritage letter, which we now have received. And we also added some taller proposed sassafras. We had spec'd out 6 to 10 foot saplings to be planted within the restoration area, selectively planted to avoid any impacts to the coastal bank stability itself, but also to allow for the existing sassafras to continue to regenerate. And really, 6 to 10 is probably as high as you want to push it in terms of amount of disturbance associated with getting those plants in and making sure that they take. We are proposing a temporary watering irrigation to make sure they take, and that will all be included within the monitoring reports to be submitted for 3 years. And based on some feedback we did get from the commission, we did go around the property and did some additional cleanup effort. I've talked to staff about that and make sure the property is in good standing. So turn it over to questions.
So Brian, I must admit, I was not happy when I walked around these two properties. And I think, Jeff, hopefully this could be maybe a project, if the commission agrees, where we get a landscaper contract signed and in your office before anything gets going. I was concerned, like it looked like the edging from the spa was just tossed into the brush. There had been dead plants removed and tossed on the other side. I mean, it's the second enforcement essentially on these sites. And I just feel like these wetland resource areas are being abused on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly expect the commission to include a condition that, qualified landscape contractor to perform the work. And I've seen other orders specify that, the commission has some, or at least staff has some, it has to be accepted and approved by that moving forward. We did, that metal edging was cleaned up, and as well as some of the...
Yeah, but it's the fact that people who are on this site are that lazy and are just throwing debris into the bushes. Like there needs to be the posted DEP number, like there needs to be signs everywhere for whoever's on here, just because it's at least the second time.
Yep.
So it's concerning.
Would fully expect that.
And I know other commissioners will weigh in, but whoever did this cutting should not call themselves landscapers. I think we also noticed maybe a couple of stumps that looked like they could have been cedars.
In this area,
There was one that the coloring and the bark left around the bottom edge really.
I think I know what you're talking about, but I did go back and look at my photographs, and
Nothing in the
yeah,
photos.
it was just all sassafras.
Okay.
So you have, sorry, Brian.
No, go ahead, I was gonna open
So
it up.
you have photographs that will show how high it was before it was cut and the number of swamp maples that was there?
I have a photograph of like the pre-existing condition, and we had called out like a total of 9 cut trees at the varying widths or
How come, why did you have pictures before it was done?
because we done the notice of intent applications for the sites.
So, here, I've got a suggestion. How about insisting on a 20-foot high camouflage wall that will make sure that they don't have the view they wanted?
Yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately, what this property owner is gonna deal with when you're putting in 6 to 10 foot trees, ultimately, some of them won't survive, so they're gonna be looking at dead things and then need to have things replaced. I mean, this is gonna be a work area. Yeah. It's definitely unfortunate.
Yeah,
Any other questions?
I had a few things that I was a little unclear about. First of all, it seemed like a row of recently planted bayberry shrubs had already been put in. You could still see like the plugs and where the ground was disturbed, and I'm assuming that happened after the cutting.
Yeah,
place.
I think the landscapers, and that could have been a different entity, jumped the gun. You know, in conversations we described we're gonna propose these plants, and they ended up planting them before
Okay.
this past fall. So
And then to me, there was at least one stump and potentially two that I'm pretty confident were Eastern red cedar. It's obvious that there's Eastern red cedar adjacent to where the arrow is cut, and I went down into the cut area. It's hard to tell from just debris, but that did not look like a sassafras log to me.
no, I agree. You know, there were some unique stumps there. I do have photographs, and that was something I did inspect. But you know, certainly if the commission would like to see some cedars put in there, you know, that's amenable too.
Yeah, I think it's already. I mean, in the area just to the left of it, it's a mix of cedar and sassafras. So just creating that across the site would look aesthetically better, anyways. So I'd like to see that be more contiguous, and especially in terms of restoration. You know, adding those longer lived trees is harder to establish because cedar's really slow growing, but it's gonna be beneficial to stabilizing that site in the long term.
And yeah, I mean, cedars will be harder to take in this area, so
Yeah.
it may require smaller specs for cedars, but yeah, certainly that condition integrated in would be acceptable.
Any other thoughts or questions from the commission?
Well, I'm just sort of speechless. I mean, no beef with you, but to say that it's acceptable, in fact, I'd like to see it restored to what it was. You know, if it costs them $250,000, that's their problem. And I know we had this discussion earlier that, you know, insisting on having them actually bring in mature tupelo, and that the tupelo probably wouldn't, wouldn't flourish in that environment. I just think it's outrageous that basically we're just here with absolutely no recourse except to say naughty, and bring in some samples.
Yeah, I mean, that's
I
definitely.
mean, I really.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one way to look at it, though, if you're looking at providing or planting commensurate height of what was lost or what was cut, you're talking about creating a disturbance almost equivalent, if not greater than the cut. So, I mean, the best regeneration is going to be the root systems that are already in place and helping promote that.
But Brian, they're getting away with a flagrant disregard for the environment and doing exactly what they please, which was to hack it down for the view. I mean, and basically, the way we're reacting, it's almost encouraging other landowners to hack stuff down for the view.
Well, I know there has been some discussions in the past about formalizing Vista pruning. You know, a lot of other local bylaws do specify specific guidelines of what's allowable. I think Vista pruning does occur throughout the island. Any waterfront property
This
can
is
probably
clear cutting.
Yeah,
that
this is
happened here.
habitat
This is clear
alteration,
cutting.
not Vista pruning.
Yeah. I mean, this is pretty blatant and enough, like, I feel you, Ian, with these mature trees that you're not gonna get back. I mean, it's gonna be decades.
Plus you get the view for a long time.
That this is
When I
maybe
ever get it back.
the sort of thing where we would maybe wanna do a fine per square foot in addition to the
Yeah.
cost that they'll have to incur to restore it. Because it's blatantly destroying established trees.
Right.
Mature.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the one thing it's the dead of winter, and I'll admit I'm not a tree expert, but having a fair share of coursework and being an ecologist by training, it didn't seem like that many sassafras saplings did actually remain in the site. I saw some. I saw some, but what a lot of I saw in the understory was things like catbrier or greenbrier and more of like forbs and grasses.
I
And
saw privet in there.
yeah, there's some stuff like that. And so the assumption that the seedlings are gonna regenerate in time, if we let them reestablish, at least needs to be monitored and maybe needs to be kind of like sped along the way with adding more seedlings in as well as mature trees at the same time.
Oh, no, that is part of the plan to add a diverse mix of native shrubs, get rid of the invasives, but also monitor and maintain. So, cutting back, making sure any honeysuckle is not overtaking any of that saplings, regrowth. But that will be integrated into the monitoring plans, but also, with the expectation, if and when a COC is granted, that's an ongoing condition.
And that's kind of a normal condition with these restorations, with the photo monitoring before and after growing seasons. That can be ongoing. So that is fairly standard. And like survivability of the plants, is also a standard condition. Any other questions or thoughts from the commission? Any questions from the public?
Hi, I just wanted to let you know
Can you
that
state your name, please?
my name's Annie Mendelson, and I've had some experience with trees, specifically sassafras. Thanks to Liz here. It's really, really hard to move a sassafras. It doesn't like to be moved. The chances of a sassafras surviving is really slim. If you've got the root system in the ground that it can sprout from, that's like your best chance. Okay?
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think we're looking to disturb the soil there. Like, obviously for planting holes you need to,
Yeah.
but the old root systems, I think, need to stay in place or there's gonna be some serious landslide issues.
Yeah.
I agree, yeah.
So hopefully that'll be done.
I mean, yeah, it is a relatively steep sloped area, so
Yeah, I wouldn't want to plant, start digging into that.
definitely
And
definitely
Are
concerned.
you guys gonna be using like some sort of erosion control blanket to establish these things? Because I can foresee, especially once the debris is removed, that every rain, there's gonna be material moving down that slope.
I think we would like to keep that option open and, based on field conditions, I would encourage the commission to condition with appropriate oversight. So, if and when something like that would be required, it could be implemented quickly,
Okay,
and or stay ahead of it.
okay.
But, the intent would be to minimize the soil disturbance as much as possible.
Any other thoughts from the commission? Jeff, do we have everything we need to close this one?
You have all of the required information. So yes.
Is there a motion to close?
Move to close.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. So moving on to Greg R. Edel at 25 High Brush Path.
Yes, yeah, so, next three. Bless you. Brian Madden from LEC Environmental Consultants, representing the applicant. Proposed project is construction of an addition, pool, patio, deck, and a small cabana and some landscaping regrading. In the western portion of the site, there's a bordering vegetated wetland system. All proposed work is located upgrading of the 25-foot buffer zone and less than 50% alteration between the 25 to 50 foot. No structural work within the 50 foot. However, there is a waiver request for groundwater separation to the bottom of the pool. The pool itself and the bottom of the foundation are located above high groundwater based on soil testing on site. And ultimately what happened was the engineer relayed to the architect that we needed a 2-foot separation, and they integrated that into the bottom of the pool, not the actual foundation of the pool. So there's a 1.2 foot separation between the bottom foundation of the pool to high groundwater. So there's not going to be any excavation into high groundwater, and no anticipated need for dewatering. And runoff from the proposed structures is going into a subsurface infiltration system on site. And so I'll turn over to questions.
Any questions from the commission?
We had a discussion a few months ago on this issue. And
Yes.
wasn't the result was the pool was made less deep?
Yes.
Yeah, I think they could lose 10 inches off.
Yeah, you can just make it 0.8 feet less deep.
We could move it up a little bit. I mean, again, the intent was to hit that 2 feet. It was just a miscommunication, and ultimately,
Yeah, I think I know what I would like to see, because it's minor, it keeps you out of high groundwater, and it relieves us of the waiver.
would it be possible to close with the condition that the pool would need to maintain that 2-foot separation at the bottom of the structure?
Would you like resubmit a plan to
So
staff showing
I
that?
think the easiest way to deal with that obviously is if you don't grant the waiver and they have the pool, they have to maintain that 2-foot separation from groundwater. They get a waiver, they can be within that. If you don't grant the waiver, they can either make the pool shallower or adjust it from there. And if it creates a situation for them that makes the plan not match the plan that's been submitted, they would have to modify their plan. So it's pretty straightforward.
Well, I'm fine with that.
8/10 of a foot, they can adjust.
Exactly.
It's still have the
It's
same
yeah,
pool.
yeah.
It's easy.
So
Any other thoughts from the commission? Questions from the public? All right, so Jeff, do we have everything we need to close?
yes, ma'am.
Brian, would you like to close?
Please.
Is there a motion? Is
Thank
there a
you.
second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
So moving on to Robert Goldrich at 41 Crooked Lane.
Brian Madden from LEC Environmental Consultants. Proposed project involves a sewer connection, an abandonment of the existing septic system. The existing septic tank within the southern portion of the site, south of the dwelling, the tank will be ruptured, cleaned out, ruptured and backfilled with clean sand per Title V requirements. And there's a proposed new sewer line, a pump chamber, and a force main out to the existing sewer line in Crooked Lane. All that's within existing developed conditions, tying into the existing primary dwelling and the cottage as well.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Questions from the public?
Hi, Annie Mendelson. In the beginning of December, fiber optic cables were put in on the lines, and the big trucks, I believe, hit the stub, the sewer stub, in front of my house. And
Sorry,
currently,
where is your house?
43 Crooked Lane, right next door.
Okay.
Currently, there's a sewer break. Okay, there's effluent that comes out periodically, which it floods and floods the street. I've notified everyone I can think of, and I request that you deny this until they figure out a better way. There are several of these stubs along my property line, which is 72 feet. I think there's a stub in front of the property where you're working. To me, it's an accident waiting to happen if a utility truck pulls over onto the berm and hits this.
Yeah, I do see this as a concern. I don't think it can hold up this project because generally speaking, connecting to town sewer would be beneficial for the properties.
But how is it beneficial if it's coming out at my place?
Right, so that's something, if it's impacting the wetlands nearby, like Jeff, do you know about
Yeah.
this, if the sewer department's involved?
So this is something that, we have passed on to the sewer department to look into.
And I've been there twice.
So I know.
Annie, I think Jeff would need those photos.
I gave it
Yep,
to him.
she gave us copies earlier, so, it's something that they are aware of. I'm assuming, based on their history, they typically fix breaks or problems that they're having. If identified, or if it's a water line itself, the water company, whoever is responsible for it's usually pretty responsive to get those fixed.
The water line is on the other side of the street. The sewer is on my side of the street.
How long ago did you notice this?
The beginning of December, excuse me.
So,
It was like a gusher.
Is it washed into the wetland?
As far as I can see, it's just pulling up soil, becoming a sinkhole, and going out into the street and not into my drive so much.
So unfortunately, as far as our purview is concerned, even though, again, it's concerning to have sewage in the street, if it's not directly impacting a wetland resource area, it's not under our heading.
Couldn't it just be delayed until this line is fixed?
Again, delaying the permitting, like the sewer department wouldn't connect them if the line had a big break in it. So we're giving them the go-ahead to eventually connect. That won't happen if the line's not working. Like, it might be 6 months from now. But this is just the permitting for them to go ahead and plan that process.
Okay, all I can say is I'm really glad this didn't happen in the summertime when neighbors are home. The only person I can see that's hooked up to this line is Sydney Fee. She's a good ways down. So I don't know where the effluent is coming from.
I think one way to deal with it from our end and kind of within our purview, if it would be helpful, would be to simply insert a condition that prior to the start of work, the applicant provides us the sewer tie-in application signed off on by the sewer department that verifies that the line is in functioning order and working correctly, that they're tying into, to help address this issue.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And then
Thank you.
And then they can't start the install until they get
They have
that
that
permit,
permit.
and that the sewer department verifies that the line that they're hooking into is in proper order. That's one way that's still kind of within our purview to tackle.
I don't think they would want to time into it at all.
No.
I don't think you'll get your permit from the sewer department if the line is not functioning, but I think it's a good double check for us to make sure that that's being addressed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Jeff, do we have everything we need to close?
We do.
All right, is there, or Brian, would you like to close?
Please.
Is there a motion to close?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, moving on to 2 South Beach Street LLC at 2 South Beach Street.
Brian Madden from LEC Environmental, representing the applicant. Proposed project involves some upgrades to the existing commercial restaurant building. Site's all located within land subject to coastal storm flowage. And working around the property, the intent is to remove some of the brick walks, replace them with cobblestone, set in grass. And on the south side of the structure, there's existing landing porch with steps that's proposed to be removed and replaced with a larger area, elevated above flood zone. And basically it's just a first floor porch on sonotube foundation with a second floor balcony, which would then require relocating the AC units to be elevated above the flood zone elevation. And associated with that, some removal of some brick walk in the back, but that's about it.
Any questions from the commission? Any questions from the public? Jeff, do we have everything we need to close?
Yes.
Brian, would you like to close?
Please.
Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. So moving on to 53 Westchester Street LLC at 53 Westchester Street.
For the applicant, Art Gasparo, Nantucket Engineering, and Julie Jordan, Garden Design Company, we're before you tonight with a notice of intent for work in the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland on an abutting property. The proposed work in the buffer zone involves planting, landscaping, and hardscaping, essentially within an existing backyard. We're trying to make an overall improvement to the area in terms of removal of invasive species and planting of native species. The wetland in question, I think, is an important part of the review of this application. We've included with the application the plan from the abutting property, which an order of conditions was issued last year. And if you're familiar with that, there's an existing driveway that already bisects this wetland, and the portion of the wetland that we're in the buffer zone to is essentially a small restricted area between our property line and the driveway. And as I show on the plan, the actual wetland, which is shown in blue, taken from that plan, is on the abutting property. We are proposing work within the 25-foot buffer zone. Again, much of which is to remove the bush honeysuckle and to within, it's already somewhat maintained. I included photos that I thought might be helpful for you as well to get a sense of the kind of buffer zone that we're dealing with here. There would be a proposed small curb that would be installed, slight expansion of the lawn area within the 25, and then a stone sitting wall and a patio between the 25 and the 50. One small corner is just about a foot into the 25. Again, we realize a waiver is required, but we believe it's justified in that there'd be an overall net benefit through the removal of the invasives and planting of additional native species. And with that, I think we'd be happy to try to address questions or concerns that you might have with the application.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
Well, I always get nervous when
put a lawn into the buffer zone. So, I mean,
That-
I see their point.
Yeah, I think the,
It's already, you know, pretty disturbed area. And I think that the net benefit overall of installing native holly, and, you know, these clients are super city people and they just go outside and they don't know what to do. So it would be nice to get them a wetland meadow that they didn't have to interact with.
I appreciate that idea, especially in terms of removing the honeysuckle and the miscanthus, especially the miscanthus, because that's going to be a huge issue going forward.
Totally.
But I can't see a stone sitting wall being justified, especially going into the, I know it's just a little bit in the 25, but even within the 50-foot buffer, I really can't wrap my head around how you're doing enough net benefit to justify something like that. And with the curve going into the 25 too, it just, me, doesn't seem to outweigh the detrimental effects of that.
Well, and certainly when you look at within the confines of the property line, I totally agree with you. But when you look on Google Maps, and next door there's a house in the 25 foot, and not to justify that, but I'm just saying that this is an area that is already extremely disturbed
yeah.
to an extreme degree, and not to justify that at all, but it's not just saying, okay, this little area is in the 25 foot. This whole area has horrible disruption in it.
Yeah, I understand that rhetoric, but unfortunately we need to assess each application on its own as it relates to the Wetlands Protection Act and our local bylaw. And it's a shame that the rest of the areas are encroaching into those wetland resource areas in a developed state, but to me, I still don't think adding additional development is going to help the process at all here.
So my question, I am concerned with the wall because I do consider that structural within the 50, which, you know, we just don't allow and I don't think is justifiable. What is the curb made out of? Because I'm worried that that might be structural
It's
as
granite.
well.
It's raised granite.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
in the 25, I don't think we should be having that.
Okay, well, I can
We haven't
revise
allowed
the
it in
drawings.
past.
Granite within the 25?
I don't,
No, we haven't, right?
I don't think
yeah.
we,
I was
Might
under
miss
the
a lot
impression
of
that
that.
you wanted to keep the lawn away from the resource area, but I'm fine with
Yeah, sometimes
revising the drawings.
we mark the edge of a lawn, especially when it's a large property where there might be reason for, landscapers to kind of take a foot every year.
Yeah, use stones. or
Yeah,
posts typically.
So it wouldn't be maybe as beneficial in this case for that demarcation. But again, that's kind of where I sit. It seems like the commission is kind of,
I'm pretty much with you, Nancy. Not at all on the 25.
yeah. Okay, any other questions from the commission?
If we could continue till the next meeting, we'll work to address your concerns.
Okay,
sure,
thank you. So you'll continue until January 22nd?
Yes, please.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So moving on to Mark Abbott and Marietta C. Hammer at 8 Hulbert Avenue.
So dark up here.
I know. These lights weren't on and I didn't turn them on.
Thank you. For the record, Paul Santos and Chloe Coggins with Nantucket Surveyors on behalf of the property owner and applicant, Mark Abbott and Marietta Ham. Mark Catone is also in the back of the audience tonight. He's actually the project architect for the current owners. This is a notice of intent application for 8 Hulbert Avenue. This was a property that had long been in the Cross family and was recently sold. So these are new owners that have bought the property and are essentially seeking to raise the existing dwelling in order to come into compliance with the current flood zone regulations. The elevation would be raised, top of foundation would be elevation 9. Existing grade in this area is approximately, I believe, around 4 or so in the front, pretty much consistently through the lot. Under the current edition of the building code, first floor now has to be flood zone plus 1 foot. So the project is designed to be in accordance with those standards. And in fact, it would be the same elevation as the property currently being constructed at the corner of Hulbert at 2 Hulbert Avenue. So the application itself is the elevation and alteration of the existing dwelling, construction of a proposed shed, and reconfiguration of the shell driveway with associated grading, landscaping, and utility installation within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland and within land subject to coastal storm flowage. So while we are in Brant Point, and we all know that's a designated flood zone, we also have a vegetated wetland to the south of the property, which is a fairly substantial wetland that you're all aware of. So the application itself, again, the new component of it, there is an existing shell driveway which is essentially spans majority of the frontage of the property. That driveway would be reduced in half to only apply, have a smaller parking area. There'd be a shed placed at the front of the property on Hulbert Avenue outside of the 50-foot no build associated with the vegetated wetland to the south of the property. And then the existing dwelling would be elevated on a foundation system with appropriate flood vents, pass-through flood vents. There'd be no change to any grade on the site. There'd be no need to change any grade. What will happen is as the building comes up, there will be structural changes that involve adding stairs or steps to get into the dwelling. At the front of the structure, where they are adding a stairway to the right side of an existing porch, and there'd be a small addition of a outdoor shower on the front side of the house. The application itself will require waivers in that the bordering vegetated wetland does require the waiver for groundwater separation. Obviously, in this area, to get a foundation system under this house, we will be within 2 feet of groundwater, but there's no other way around that in this particular area. Typically, that's not a waiver we'd ask for in a flood zone, but we have the component of the vegetated wetland that is triggering for that request for a waiver. And again, that's simply to get the footing system and the foundation system in, so when they raise the structure. They'll be eliminating stairways off of the easterly side of the structure, and a stairway along the back side of the deck would be eliminated also. But again, the stairs that are there would all be added to get additional steps to meet the grade into the existing first floor. The site is not located within a NHESP jurisdiction. It is in the flood zone, and we do require the waivers, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. The shed itself would be a pier system. No foundation, would be a pier type of system for the shed component. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So, where is the shower going to be?
It's right in the front, in this area, right on the front side of the house, right there, essentially at grade. Yeah.
Outside of the 50.
Oh, yes, outside the 50, yes, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, the only work that would occur within the 25 or the 50 would be the foundation work, underneath the structure. But yes, the shed and the added stairway would be outside the 50.
I'm assuming that the current foundation system is also within the 2 foot?
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Yeah,
It's a
so
pier.
essentially you're not adding
No,
something
oh, no,
in,
no.
it's already
No, it's a pier
within the
system,
2
but
foot.
it has to be within the 2 foot.
I just
yeah.
wanted to make that
Yes. Yep.
clear, since we have been kind of sticklers about that.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the commission? I guess also with this one, since it's going up higher, I think the lighting requirements, like towards a wetland, should be called out specifically.
Sure, well, you guys can condition that.
Yeah.
Or-
Just because I think the higher up you go, the more likely you're gonna get bird strikes and all those sorts of things disturb life back there.
How high is it gonna be?
Well, elevation, the first floor right now, first floor is at 6.8.
I was just thinking the roof, I mean, I was thinking it's already over 30.
Well, I don't know if it, Mark, have you done a?
I think it's slightly under 30 currently.
Yeah.
The ridge. And I think it'll sit significantly lower still than the new building going up in the corner, adjacent to which is much larger.
Yeah. So we're going, so the first floor is 6.8, first floor will be about 10. The floor itself, the foundation will be 9, the system will be up about a foot above that, yeah, so.
I feel like the existing structures are still, yeah.
Any questions from the public on this one? Commission, are we good? Jeff, do we have everything we need to close? Paul, would you like to close?
Please, yes, thank you.
Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to Jason Moroney at 29 Rhode Island Avenue.
Okay, again, Paul Santos and Chloe Coggins from Nantucket Surveyors. On behalf of the property owner and applicant, Jason Moroney. This is a request for a 520 square foot addition onto the existing property located out in the Spitz Point area of Nantucket on the end of Rhode Island Avenue. The application is for a single-family, in addition to a single-family dwelling with associated grading, landscaping, and utility installation within land subject to coastal storm flowage. The property itself is located adjacent to some coastal dune. The work is outside of the 100-foot setback to the dune. And in fact, we've, at request of staff, added that component to the plan, and I'll submit that to Jeff. So the application before you is strictly for work within land subject to coastal storm flowage. I will say that we are currently also filing with FEMA a letter of map revision in order to take the property out of the flood zone designation, as it's our opinion that it is actually not in the flood zone. What that entails on our end is this is shown as in a velocity zone. Oddly enough, when you look at the flood mapping that's provided in your application, essentially the flood zone goes around this property and then goes back out. The properties to the east and west are not necessarily in the flood zone. And we are elevated above the flood zone. So we made an initial application with FEMA. They requested some additional information, as their contention was that it was potentially in an area known as what was a primary frontal dune, which kind of brought about the flood zone designation. We've provided enough information, I think, to disprove that. But in the meantime, we wanted to at least file with you in case we don't get the designation that we still have a valid permit in the flood zone. It will change depending upon whether we get the letter of map revision or if we don't. It'll basically, the only thing that'll change on the project is if we get the revision, technically we wouldn't even have to be before you. And it would mean we'd be able to put in a foundation system as opposed to elevating the building on piers. The way this is set up now, if it's not taken out of the flood zone, it would have to be elevated on piers, which the existing building already is. The existing building is elevated on piers, and it's actually above the flood zone. The first floor is at 13.3. The FEMA flood zone in this area, the velocity zone is elevation 9. So the only difference here is whether a foundation system goes in under this structure or not. That's the application itself. No change in grade under either proposal, no change in grade proposed. It's essentially an addition to the existing structure. Grades stay the same. Existing septic system on this property had been upgraded some years back. It's a compliant IA system that currently exists. It's a 4-bedroom system. We're not adding any additional flow that would require an upgrade to the septic system. Systems are in this area also serviced by by well water, but again, no change to that. So happy to answer any questions that you may have. We are outside any NHESP jurisdiction. We do have our DEP file number, and that's the extent of the work.
Any questions from the commission?
But I'm curious that you actually get sufficient water from the well.
I've not heard anything in this area, although there is a water tank storage on, like there is out many of. We all see that fire truck rolling down the Nantucket every once in a while. So, but there is a water tank on the property here. Yeah. So.
You know, even if they take you out of the flood zone, it's gonna be right back in like 10 years. I feel like that's
Or less.
yeah, or less.
Yeah. But it's just oddly enough the way, even when they did the 2014 mapping, why they took this particular, like I said,
Yeah.
this
What
property is clean, this one's clean, and the line comes up, wraps around this property and goes, it just around.
Interesting that they were lost zone, there's no AE zone running across.
No, it's just, and when their comment back to us was, it's a primary frontal dune. It's not a primary frontal dune, so we'll submit some information to say that, and we'll see. Yeah, not yet.
So my question, I guess, because currently it is flood zone, you're proposing this to be on piers?
On
like the
piers,
houses?
yes, it has to be
Okay.
on piers, yes.
Great. Just wanted to clarify.
Yep, it'll be on piers, just like the existing structure. Yep.
Okay, any other questions from the commission? Questions from the public? Jeff, do we have everything we need to close?
We do.
Paul, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Is there a motion? Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So moving on to 17BR Rosalie Nominee Trust at 17 Baxter Road.
Brian Madden from LEC Environmental. The proposed project is a proposed walking path connection. Something very similar happened on the northerly abutting property, number 19 last year. Resource areas were previously confirmed under that order. Coastal dune exists east of the property on town land, and land subject to coastal storm flowage is located further east of that. So there's no resource areas on the subject parcel, but buffer zone does extend, and there was a walking path that came down from 19, came onto 17, and down onto the town property. As part of that application, there was bayberry shrubs planted at the trailhead to cut off that connection. And so this would just be an establishment of a walking path on number 17, but considering some of the slopes, some stairs are required. That's all outside the 50-foot. It's a water-dependent project anyways, but we are proposing to abandon that existing remaining portions of the trail, replant some arrowwood shrubs at the end points, and let that naturally fill in. So relatively straightforward.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
Are you gonna plant the path itself or just at the end?
I would suggest just planting the ends and letting it fill in.
Is this path going to have public access from the footpath?
I presume no, it's private property, with the bluff walk coming. I'm sure there'll be signage similar to other properties.
Okay, 'cause I think some properties we've asked to allow access, right? Or am I
Yes.
wrong on that?
Limited success.
Yeah.
Block it off anyway. Any other thoughts from the commission?
Yeah, I want to be clear. I'm not quite clear. So this proposal is for these stairs to be approved, and we have nothing on them.
Correct. Yeah, just abandon the walking path, a new walking path coming up, given the slope, proposing stairs to connect up to a walking path that ultimately there would be a structure proposed up by Baxter.
That's basically shoehorning another problem.
But you're proposing stairs, and this permit will allow you to build them, but we have nothing, you have no specs, you have no.
Just a
drawings,
typical,
just
yeah, typical elevated wooden set of stairs, 4 feet
handrails, no
wide.
handrails,
With handrails, yeah.
and no, just a straight run. I just like to
Exactly.
see, usually there's a structure with components and, you know, a drawing, and
Yeah,
you
no,
have an idea what the posts are, what, you know.
It's standard spec, 4x4s, driven in. This isn't on the coastal bank.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just buffer zone, taller
I
shrubs.
know it's
So
outside the 50 and everything, but usually there's a.
yeah, I mean
a little more than
aesthetically,
just a little-
it wouldn't stick out as much. There's a similar set of stairs on the southerly abutting property. Not proposing any landings or anything like that, just a straight shot. If that, once they get into a better design that changes, we'll be back in front of you, but right now, it's just the set of stairs.
Well, I take your point that,
I mean, a better design,
see it
like,
properly drawn out.
Just like a profile?
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, what's to say you don't build whatever, and you just say, well, it, represents a set of stairs.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, it's pretty,
Yeah, 4 foot plus or minus stairs
Yeah.
could be almost
I just
anything.
don't feel comfortable approving a set of stairs without even knowing how it's constructed.
I think that's a good point.
so just like a profile with some standard specs
Yeah,
and a
maybe how it
narrative.
would fit with the actual topography here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I proposed the location. I walked out there and looked at the topography. The intent was just to have a walking path, and it was really me who said, I don't think anyone's going to be coming down here.
We're gonna roll down.
Yeah, I mean, we could have like a very, switchback.
Well, it's over 25 feet of grade change.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a substantial set of stairs.
Yeah. Well, would the preference be to have a switchback through the buffer zone, or?
I mean, I think I'd rather see the straight shot
Yeah,
with less
it's
disturbance.
Less disturbance, but just to have an idea.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly
I
what's
mean,
being
it's-
proposed.
This is a little vague.
Yeah, and given some of the contractors on Nantucket, you really don't know
Wanna
what
make
they
it
would do with
crystal
this.
clear
Yeah.
what we're proposing. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I think an actual plan of what they're gonna build.
No, I think
Well,
that's,
that's what we would usually see.
yeah, a good point.
Yep. Yeah, and apologies for not submitting that. Typically, this was really just to get a walking path connection, and the stairs kind of fell in
Yeah, they had to
late.
be.
But I'll request a continuance,
Okay, until January 22nd?
please.
Thank you.
Just before you guys continue, that's something you guys just wanna draft over for, can I draft it over the one for pending with the.
I would think so.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on into request for determination, the Gato Family Trust at 92 Cliff Road.
Alright, so, Dartmouth had to leave, so I told him I would present it if there were any questions. That we would continue it, but to at least get him the questions that you guys may have. He sends his apologies for having to go. But we reviewed it, and the project that they're looking to do is on the existing property at 92 Cliff Road, is installing a sewer line to connect to the existing sewer line that runs up to the intersection here on Pilgrim Road, and coming in and running the line down to service these two buildings, abandon their septic system, and then tie into the existing sewer line that's there. And that's the project that they're looking to do.
All right. Any questions from the commission?
No.
Jeff, does staff have a recommendation for
Yeah,
this
we were
one?
gonna recommend a -3 to allow the work in the buffer zone, without a notice of intent. Oh, and a, +2 to confirm the resource area boundaries to that as well.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, that passes unanimously. Then moving on to minor mods, Abrams Point Realty Trust at 30 Rabbit Run Road.
For the applicant, Art Gasparo, I'm before you tonight for the project, which was for the relocation of the dock due to the accretion of sand, where this float has now resting on the bottom, so the purpose of the minor modification is that we had received an order of conditions that we would use the existing supports and relocate them, and in fact. We believe that it would be much less invasive to drive 4 timber piles to support the walkway. Right now, these aluminum gangways are fairly massive. They're quite heavy, and
Ladies, can we stop talking, please? It's distracting.
and so we believe that right now the current support goes down into a large chunk of concrete that comes up and is sort of a fabricated type of a metal post fixture. And in meeting with the contractor, he believes that it would be, to get that out and move it would require an excavator on the beach, digging up the beach, and that 4 pilings, we could then support the weight just by resting them on the pilings. So literally on the plan, where I show the 4 dots, that's what's being proposed is 4 timber-driven piles, and we could do it in one day. We would still need the excavator, but which we can get on the beach right down around this bulkhead, come down here, drive the 4 piles, and that would be it. Instead of having to dig up there'd be no digging involved because it would be a vibratory head.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Any questions from the public on this one? Jeff, do we have everything to issue a minor mod?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minor mod?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then we're moving on to 8 Bishop's Rise LLC at 8 Bishop's Rise.
Brian Madden from LEC. Proposed minor mod is simply a revised well location that's outside the 50-foot buffer zone for an order that was issued last year with work under construction. That's it.
Any questions from the commission? Questions from the public? Jeff, do we have everything to
Yes.
issue the minor mod? Is there a motion to accept the minor mod?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you. So moving on to certificates of compliance, we have John J. Moeller at 10 Monomoy Creek Road. Are we taking all these separately?
We can probably do them all at once.
All at once. Okay. So 10 Monomoy Creek Road, SE 482797, 10 Monomoy Creek Road, SE 482801, and then Monomoy Creek Nominee Trust at 12 Monomoy Creek Road, SE 482665.
All right.
Big one.
Yeah. So the I'll just reference them by the file numbers. 2797 was the removal of the gabion basket retaining wall, that old driveway edge. We took that out and graded the slope and revegetated that slope. I supervised the initial construction of that and the plantings. We've conducted subsequent monitoring inspections of the plantings. You guys have been out there. Aside from some of the cedars that were planted that are struggling, the area is, well vegetated by the planted species. And we submitted before and after photographs. I guess before I move on to the other orders, any specific questions on that work?
I guess because I noticed the one clearly dead cedar and one that looks like it's on its way out. Whether you're gonna replace those trees or go with something different.
Well, I guess maybe looking for input. I think if you've replaced it, you may be dealing with the same situation. The area is replete with other vegetation. I don't see a harm just letting it die and provide some cover.
And whoever's on the new landscaping contract will monitor all that stuff in the future.
Yeah, because of the side slope, and I've seen this on a couple other ones, cedars, the planted cedars on side slopes have struggled, I've seen on island. If it was flatter topography, maybe there would have been better success. But yeah, that would be rolled into. I don't see a specific need for any really future management, monitoring, or maintenance of that side slope. I think it's well established now. There's no erosion control still there. It was removed once it was fully stabilized.
Because when was that finished planting? Like how many growing seasons has that been in?
So it was. I have a monitoring report. It's spring 2017. Okay. So we've gone through 3 growing seasons. Yep. Yeah, and we had previously submitted a monitoring report. I have, some photographs of that under construction. So.
Yeah, I think if it's just 1 or 2 trees there, it's okay to have a few snags in your environment. It's good for insects and bats and birds and things like that. As long
they'd have to leave them.
Yeah, they have to. They
I'd
have to be
just leave
kept.
it.
They have to be kept in place.
Yeah.
So yeah, those were the first things to go.
Let's get rid of it.
Yeah, homeowners are gonna look at that and say out because they don't understand. So I guess we'd have to have maybe ongoing conditions.
Yeah.
For monitoring some of these restoration areas.
Yeah, you can certainly carry.
Yeah.
Like that forward.
To make sure that the snags do stay.
Yeah, I think we need an evaluation. Well, like the issue becomes okay. There's a possibility, at least, that a lot more of these cedars might die, and then we'll have to reevaluate. But if it's just sporadic trees, I think we can just get by with the condition that they remain in place.
Yeah, in other areas of the property, they were planted on flatter slopes, and are doing better. It was just, I think, just the 2 on that side slope that
And make.
Yeah.
Make them
Or
stay.
one's struggling. One didn't make it.
It's like in hospice care.
All right, so maybe moving on to 2801. That was for the construction of the home on number 10. There were a couple minor modifications proposed in that one. One of which was modifying the spot to a pool, 15 by 18 foot pool. That pool was ultimately not constructed. Construction was completed in late 2017. And everything has been constructed in substantial compliance.
Excuse me, Brian. Guys, I just want to remind everyone in the audience that we should not be having conversation. It really distracts people behind you and on the sides, and this room is difficult to hear. Thank you. All right, Brian.
So I don't know if there's any specific questions on that work.
Any questions from the commission?
Not for that, no.
All right, so 2665 was for number 12 for the relocation of existing dwellings, additions, patio, pool, cabana, associated grading, landscaping. Similarly, all work was wrapped up in 2017. As part of that, we had proposed a bunch of revegetation areas that part of the monitoring report that we submitted. Those are some of the areas where we did plant cedars that are doing moderately well. And everything is well established there. The only recommendation that we had provided is maybe putting some permanent markers out behind the pool to just delineate the limits of the there was a meadow restoration area out there that, you know, it is allowed to be mowed, but we just want to separate it out from the typical lawn area. So
Was the meadow restoration like up in front of the pool?
behind the pool.
Behind the pool,
Yeah,
like
it
on
kinda
the harbor
crept
side?
up. Yeah, it kind of crept up the slope. Yeah, you can, in the monitoring report, I had submitted some photographs of, you can kind of see the different seed mix that was used. This is the lawn. Yeah, and this is the seed mix. This is it coming in separately. But there should be some separation of, some markers out there to.
Yeah, I mean, how low is that meadow?
Oh, this is like right when it's starting to germinate.
So that area does worry me a little bit about how established it actually.
Oh, it's stabilized. It's just a matter of making sure it's only mowed once a year,
Okay.
separate from the
So
lawn
what are you
area.
proposing, Marcus?
I think just some boulders or granite posts would be appropriate, or 4x4 cedar posts. Those are kind of the standard stuff.
Is there any, oversight in when it gets mowed annually, or is it just up to the?
It wasn't included in the order as specified. It was like an ongoing condition on a historic use out there or historic activity. But certainly, it can be rolled into overall monitoring for the site, which is happening or will be happening. I mean, it could just be incorporated in as, mowing's only supposed to occur from November to March or something like that. Into the COC.
All right, so, any questions? Or any further questions from anybody?
I've sort of forgotten what the historic use was. Was it a dairy farm originally?
I don't know. I mean,
Before, a couple of years ago.
yeah, I mean, at the time of the filing, there was a smaller dwelling on there that I think I wasn't part of the NOI application. We came in under an amendment, but there was submitted historic aerial photographs showing what had been mowed dating, into the 60s, I think, at least. But it all is, fully restored, and they did add a lot of plants out there.
Jeff, does staff have a recommendation as far as like ongoing conditions for any of
So
these?
I do. I also like just to say, in cases like this before, I know we just went through all of the discussion. Our current recommendation is to hold these open until we've issued the order for the restoration work for the violation on the property. So I guess it's our opinion that the sites aren't in compliance at the moment. I think we feel more comfortable at the one related specifically to the Gabion wall, because it's not really related to the development of the property as much for the residential development and management of that specific area. And we talked with Brian about this too, so it's not like a surprise that he came at the meeting, but it's something where it's kind of been our past practice to have that issued, because there's nothing that would essentially stop someone. I'm not saying they would consider doing it when we're doing to say, well, they've issued our COCs, we're gonna withdraw the application for the other part and deal with it and fight it out later, deal with it. I think it's better to get that permit issued, get that restoration at least approved and conditioned, and then issue COCs related to the other permits that are outstanding at that point. That's kind of a recommendation. But I think that being said, in all these cases where that's there, anything that relates to monitoring and ongoing vegetation management is always something that we recommend as ongoing conditions.
Thank you for that opinion, because I feel uncomfortable issuing with some of the things we saw on Monday. Especially like the steel edging thrown in the bushes, like it's just very.
Did you say it's been removed?
It has, yeah.
Yeah. Just the fact that it's being.
No, I know what you're saying.
There was like
Done
pieces
at this
of,
point.
pieces of kayaks out there and all sorts of stuff that.
It was pretty staggering. So a front end loader had just gone right over the edge. And then been pulled up by a helicopter and left the debris there.
Oh, the dead trees, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Bad. And really, whoever did that should not be rehired, so you should spread that name around, because nobody wants them.
I'm sure they're not gonna be used.
Yeah. So how does the commission feel about issuing for the Gabion wall, or do we want to just hold all three?
I mean, that's done.
Want to hold all three? Do them all at once next time?
I'll just default to what the staff thinks is
Yes,
best.
I mean, that's what, maybe Jeff was going down that road.
All right. So we'll continue all of these until next meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
sure, thanks.
So these will continue until January 22nd. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much.
But at least we know now you don't have other questions, it's just a matter of dealing with the main issue of compliance.
All right. So moving on to orders of conditions. Pass those out.
So many extra trees to this.
I know.
We made 7 copies. It's not a bad habit.
Some late cancellations. All right, so we're gonna begin with 262 Pulpus Road Nominee Trust at 262 Pulpus Road.
So looking at my notes, we mentioned existing samplings to be retained, and you want to put that in your notes.
19?
Part of that. Sorry? Okay. I'm not, I said my piece.
Sorry, I wrote all of these today, getting caught up in some of the notes from last time I missed. So that's what happens when I go away. Other than the games and stuff. So you wanted the saplings to be
Retained, I think that's what we discussed that.
Yeah,
So,
it is.
Point of clarification. I think we talked about the 4-inch EDH.
yeah.
So I think we have a provision that says all saplings or trees greater than 4-inch EVH shall be retained.
Any other thoughts from the commission? Is there a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Then moving on to Bonnie L. Sacerdote, trustee, 19 Kimball Avenue.
This was the sand strip fencing. be 1,000% honest here in saying that it's the same order that's on the two abutting properties for sand roof fencing, other than it references the correct natural heritage letter by date instead of the one from 2019. Basically enough, it's like a year to the day of the last one.
I still think it's funny that like they don't think crows are gonna land on.
I do have a picture in my office of a crow on one of those posts,
Yeah,
but that's
I
okay.
mean,
So,
it's so ridiculous.
Rather see crows use it than have to put bird begone on every single post. It's annoying stuff.
but I did make it a point to patrol the area for the photos
To snap a photo.
to get a
Yeah,
photo.
it's worth it.
One of those, but
We all knew it was gonna happen.
I actually think it may actually be easier to post because they create a point.
Rip.
So that's all I heard.
So, just looking at the site plan, I was thinking, what happens in the future when the high tide line moves up to where this into the next? Is that something we need to qualify, or is that something that would come before us in the future?
That would come before us. They have a lot of other issues with the high tide line. So I have an odd suspicion too that if the water started getting that sanitary fencing that much, it wouldn't be retaining material.
Yeah.
And we would probably see more significant application for more significant structure at that point.
Yeah, I looked if anything like on the photos from the existing sand fencing that the sand was accreting there, and you know, the only thing that maybe we need to consider is that if the sand overtops the fencing, then what needs to be done.
Leave it until erosion happens again.
Yeah, I guess so.
All right, is there a motion to approve as drafted?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Moving on to Patrick S. Keating at 49 Red Barn Road.
This was for the away from the other back. I'm trying to sustain myself on this. I'll be fair in saying I didn't have any clutter. This seemed pretty straightforward.
Thoughts from the commission, or is there a motion to approve as drafted?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Okay, so moving on to John J. Moeller at 10 Monomoy Creek Road. So Jeff, I guess this is one where we would wanna add that, condition to have like a landscaper contracted, you know, within the next 6 months,
Yeah, so
or,
I think we'd add a 27, it's a prior to the start of the work. Yeah, okay. Shall provide a contract for the restoration work and all monitoring to cover the life of the roads. Alright, so I'll read the background. So it's prior to the start of work, the applicant shall provide a contract for the restoration work and all monitoring to cover the life of the permit.
Do we need to actually call out the species and heights required, or is that just contained within the plan that they've submitted? I mean, I know like the shrubs, there's gonna be a shrub mix, but we talked about the red cedar and the sassafras, so specific trees going in.
Sure, I mean, you could add a 28, but, I mean, you could put, all red cedar. sassafras. Saplings planted shall be, give a size in mind,
I think 6 feet, in my opinion.
shall be a minimum of 6 feet. Right.
So what was 27?
27 is the prior to the start of work, the applicant shall provide a contract for the restoration work and all monitoring to cover the life of the permit.
Do we want an actual planting?
Like submitted after the fact.
Yeah.
So, if we go to, there is a 23 that the applicant shall file for a partial certificate of compliance upon the initial planting and seeding.
Okay.
Then complete with an as-built planting plan, including demonstrating compliance with the.
Okay.
So,
Yep.
it's they need to come in and get you guys to sign off before, on a partial, before they really even enter monitoring phase. I do have one more, this is a thought from our discussion, number 29, that would read, all loose soils shall be stabilized by erosion blankets or bracketed by silt fence. Bracketed by silt fence. And then say, commission staff shall be notified of installation and will be inspected prior to continuing. So they can, if they have it, they can put it in, they just have to let us know, and we have to go look at it. Make sure that it's properly installed. That should,
That's good.
it's been like our ongoing request lately, is to track down some fence.
It's a lot of it.
You should have last stock cell phones a couple of years ago.
You need to find sustainable silt fence and then buy stock. Any other thoughts by the commissioner, or is there a motion to approve as amended?
Motion to approve as amended number 27, 28, and 29.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
So I will totally fess up that the order for number 12 Monomoy Creek Road is the exact same order as the one for 10. So I guess I would anticipate those conditions just going over.
Seems good.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think they need to be there. Alright, so any thoughts on this, or is there a motion to approve, including the same added conditions?
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, that passes unanimously.
Right, and just to cover everything, since I mentioned earlier, not doing strict compliance until we issue the order, and knowing that we're gonna do the order later. We also kind of have the practice of at least getting through the 10-day state appeal period on orders before we issue out, so. It comes up from time to time, especially for unpermitted work that we permit certificates to at least make sure that they're active and stable permits before they
Go.
get closed out or other
Yeah.
permits get closed out, so. It's not like one of those, we can just put this on the agenda in front of the other ones and then done it. We still want this.
All right, so moving on to Greg R. Edel at 25 High Brush Path.
Do we want to formalize that the waiver is not granted?
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
So I think we would say waivers are not granted for the project as proposed. And the pool shall be required to maintain a minimum. Can't spell this out. 2-foot separation to groundwater. That'd be down to the waiver section. That's there.
Any other,
Move to approve this amendment.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving on to Robert Goldrich at 41 Crooked Lane.
This was the sewer connection. So I think we would have
So we just have to add the
They have that.
sewer plan.
condition that prior start of work, the applicant shall be approved sewer connection permit from the sewer department to confirm proper function of the Vista line.
All will be done.
That's also, or going up the look.
I've heard of other sewer problems kind of on the other side there, so.
There may be a host of interesting things happening. in
Yeah.
that neighborhood that there may have been privately installed sewer at some point.
Yeah.
Some interesting spaghetti lines that are through there that may be decommissioned kind of.
Yeah, it's a little bit iffy.
I leave it to David.
Move to approve as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving on to 2 South Beach Street, LLC at 2 South Beach Street.
Couldn't really think of any interesting. This was for the patio and the second floor balcony in Tlissom, on the backside of Waterville.
Is there a motion to approve as drafted? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. So moving on to Mark Abbott and Marietta C. Hammer at 8 Hulbert Avenue.
Sorry, I do have a correction in the permit overview. I forgot to include the raising of the existing structure. It is raising with the S, not with the Z.
And I had something form.
The other thing, Jeff, I wanted to call out was the lighting.
Yes, so we can say number 19, all lighting, all exterior lighting shall be directed down and away from the board of vegetative law. We can necessarily permit that condition against the flood zone. Certainly can't against the people.
Any other thoughts from the commission? Or is there a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? That passes unanimously. It's crazy. So moving on to Jason Moroney at 29 Rhode Island Avenue.
This is for the addition on the building that may or may not be in the flood zone.
It is 101 feet from it, dude.
What's funny is we went out there and it wasn't on the plan, and I was like, I really feel like we should show the deal, because I feel like it could be close. And I kind of pasted off, it was like right on the cusp. So I put on it as 101 feet, and I was like, wow,
101.
pretty close. My spidey sense is working.
True professional.
Spent a lot of time surveying in my life, get a pretty good pace going to guesstimation.
So are any thoughts from the commission, or is there a motion to approve as drafted?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Alright, and then we can skip 17 back.
Okay. So moving on to other business, approval of minutes for December 16th, 2019 and December 18th, 2019. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great minutes. Thank you to Terry. And moving on to monitoring reports, we have Thompson at 14 Fargo Way.
Any questions or comments, we could pass them along, or we just kind of include it just to make sure that.
I briefly looked through the photos.
We can keep looking too, certainly no. You don't have to take any formal action, we'll just, again,
They're there.
try to get them there, get people credit for submitting them, and
And we also have a monitoring report for 17 Eat Fire Spring Road LLC at 17 Eat Fire Spring Road. Any questions about those? Good to go. All right, so then moving on to continued discussion of SE 482824 nourishment material and sand sampling protocol.
you guys are gonna have to focus that one, because that was the discussion. So,
Our discussion last time really kind of centered around questions to the applicant about adding some additional tests that their representative agreed to.
Yeah, there was some discussion about parameters to be included, as well as additional sampling that we had spelled out within the intertidal zone, or the tidal area, the beach area.
I have to say, in looking at the work log, I think it's part of this whole thing. Are we storing the materials that you're collecting?
Since you asked us to
Okay.
at the last meeting.
And then the other thing I noticed, on December 21st and December 24th, the same photo is submitted, and then with different quantities of, or a different estimated volume of material. So I wasn't sure if just the wrong picture got put on a form,
Yeah, that's what would have happened there, and I can look into it, but depending on who did the report on each day, they will have the picture in their phone. Well, then I'll have it.
Your name's on those.
I think you have it.
Okay, so the 22nd and the 24th?
21st and 24th.
Okay, so we'll resubmit whichever one is mistaken.
Yeah, you had a copper wire.
Yeah. I was like,
Chances of
what?
getting
And then
two
I was
of
like,
those
oh, the
copper
same
wires.
feet. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay. Yes. Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. So commission, what are our thoughts on this discussion?
You mean going forward? Well, where are we with the chemical test and the biological test?
Yep.
You have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can give you an update. Dwight Dunk with Epsilon Associates. OHI actually completed all this sand sampling today. They've been out here all week collecting those samples. And following the analytes that you all asked, the original proposal as well as the analytes you requested on the 18th. I wasn't here. I did submit a letter just kind of giving some background of why we didn't include those or why they're kind of duplicative, but those are, you guys have them in the minutes, have them in your motion, so those have been collected. Just briefly, based on the meeting on the 18th, the OHI did submit, we submitted the protocol from OHI. It included all those analytes. They are collecting discrete samples. There's no compositing of samples. The sampling program does sample all of the sand that was placed on the template this August. Since this autumn, we had the survey. There had been nothing put on it all summer up until this fall. We have the survey, the drone survey from September, so we know the elevation above which all the material has been placed. The protocol that they've identified and proposed with the 16 samples on the template, as was written in the protocol, that number is based on the 1 sample per 1,000 cubic yards of material that is not, that was visually, native sand, and then 1 sample per 500 cubic yards of the material that was much darker in color. So that's where the 16 samples come in from the template, so that the state requires for the sampling plans for dredge materials. Again, this is a hybrid site. The protocol really is for characterizing the sand, following more of an MCP, mass contingency plan. The state hazardous waste regulations, more of that site characterization. Those analytes match well with the dredging analytes, but the volume of material, we follow that dredging material protocol. So it's 1 sample per 1,000 cubic yards of the material. It's more of a native material, and 1 per 500 cubic yards, so twice the rate for the material that was in the dark color. And then the additional 16 samples out on the beach, 8 between the mean high water and the TOAS of the template, and 8 out in the intertidal zone. So that's the program. It was completed today, as I said. The field screening, I know Attorney Cohen mentioned something about on-site testing. The on-site testing, as we described, is actually using a PID, a photo ionization detector. It's basically electronic nose to test for volatile materials. Everything was screened. They did have 1 sample today that had pretty much the lowest detection you can get with a PID. So that's going to be run for the VOCs to see if there's anything there. Sometimes you get false positives with the PID instrument. So that's the update on that. The samples are at expedited return of a 5-day turnaround from the laboratory. They should start getting raw results next week, but it will take some time to then evaluate that data.
So just really quickly, not to interrupt Joey, I will confirm we did pop out to the site on Monday. And can confirm that they were definitely actively sampling while we were there. We just kind of watched from above and watched them collect a couple samples from the template area. But they were actively doing it, so I'm not surprised that they finished up today.
Yeah,
to do that area, but they were there.
And
You did see it. So.
Yep, and the way that they collect them is driving the tubes down. The tubes have a thin plastic liner so they can actually cut them open so they can get the discrete samples.
Yeah, I was actually out there yesterday. So,
It's pretty cool to see.
So that's where the sampling program is right now.
Okay. So I think maybe in your letter you said, gave like a February 12th date of having those results. Is that still seeming correct, or do you think it might be sooner if there's a 5-day turnaround?
Well, like I said, there's the 5-day turnaround from the last date of receipt of samples. And then it takes some time to evaluate the data. That's the raw data from the laboratory. Then they want to, they need to take it in that data, evaluate it, compare it to standards, compare it to background standards, compare it to one another, and before they can start characterizing the material.
Okay. So we're still
So I
shooting
think- Still
looking at
the
30 days.
February.
I think so. I mean, if we can get we can get something sooner from them, we will certainly, contact Jeff and get it down to you sooner. We'd like to beat the expectation of the 12th, but I can't guarantee that right now.
Okay. Thank you.
So we had talked about requiring the lab to retain the material.
Yes.
We're gonna be doing that.
Yes, Jim asked for them to retain the material. It's pretty standard that they do retain it for a period of time because this typically in the MCP world, this is an iterative process. You start with a site characterization program such as this. You find out if there's any anthropogenic contamination. If there is, that often leads to some more evaluation. So samples are retained for a period of time. Jim has asked that these samples be retained until he lets them know that they can be discarded.
And we kind of,
Yeah.
and then I know we had talked at one point about initiating a third-party independent reviewer to go over, and especially if we have the material retained, they could go back into the
Yeah, so we'll obviously, with any of these things and all the reports, I mean, we have our regular review with Mr. Berman to send all of this information off. He's a geologist by trade, so I think the soil is pretty there. We sent him the protocol to look at as well, so we'll keep him in the loop, and he can always provide us contacts and something that we want additional review that could provide us that service relatively quickly. But he's aware, and we can keep him in the loop, and with Dwight's update tonight, we'll probably let him know that that'll be, forthcoming here soon, and we can get that to whoever needs to have it, and then obviously any of the information that we also collect, any of the reporting that they have, they either send off to DEP, or we also send to DEP, so one of them doesn't get sent, so there'll be plenty of lines to view it, and if there needs to be extra or samples need to be recollected or rerun, that's something that we have the ability to still do, so.
Okay.
That's good. Any other questions from the commission?
One question that we have, there was also a discussion about what to do with the material now that it's on the template in terms of dealing with it, and there was a discussion at the last meeting of a protocol of pushing the material off the top of the template in thin lifts, thin shavings, in collecting any man-made material as it comes down the template as a procedure to remove that. This is all obviously after OHI's sampling is completed, if it's determined to be free of contamination. Is that protocol? I know there was a discussion, but I just want to know so that we can start getting ready to do that work if that approach is acceptable to the commission.
So I know I am uncomfortable with pushing, it was like 10,000 cubic yards over. You know, at this point, because we don't want to saturate a system, but I'm not comfortable approving any protocol for that until we have the full chemical analysis back, to know that this is safe to be pushing over.
Correct.
the edge.
No, we understand.
Yeah,
We understand.
so-
There would be no physical movement
just
of it
wanna know
until
if you
then.
could do it.
We just wanted to know what methods, you know, being optimistic that everything comes back, that it's, you know, free of anthropogenic material, you know, contamination, that the only stuff that's in there is man-made materials such as brick and, you know, the type of stuff that we're seeing in those daily reports. If
So you're
that
asking
protocol,
if we accept what you propose to do?
yes.
Again, it's a lot of.
Yeah, I see
Yeah,
what
it's a lot of material at once.
I see what you're getting at, but I think it's, in my opinion, it's best to view the analysis of the sediment to see, is it clean or is it contaminated, and then we can have the discussion about what we need to do from there, because we're going to be spending a lot of time going down this path. If it does turn out contaminated, we'll have to do something else anyway.
Yeah. And you know, the other thing is, you know, if you're out there, there are exposed tubes. We've understood, and I kind of confirmed it through email with the office, that to not be pushing the material down until this is done.
Yeah.
You know, we wanted to be clear because there's obviously two actions out there right now: the enforcement order and the order of conditions, and you know, we wanted to make sure that was clear. That's the other reason why we're trying to move this material, move the sampling as fast as possible, and if we can get results back sooner to you sooner than the 12th, we certainly are going to do that. So that we can. There's a lot of reasons to do that.
What's the difference between raw data and finished data in terms of, you said that you might get
The raw data, you know, comes from each sample, each round, and you know, it needs to be pulled together, typically into consolidated tables so that you can see, you know, all of that, and then it gets compared to OHI. Will use some different, you know, we'll use different standards to compare it to see if there are any exceedances of allowable limits for, you know, these materials, and then also do some statistics of, you know, the within and the between concentrations. So there, you know, that's what I'm getting. You know, when I say the raw data, it's actually the straight lab reports right from the lab to OHI, and then they just need to pull them together. And you know, that's it's not hard work; it's just time-consuming work to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we would see a reference range for each of the parameters tested, and then minimum exceeded values and things like that.
Correct.
We'll make it digestible for the public.
Get
Yes.
prepared to present,
Yes, and getting it prepared to present. So.
so that we can read it and understand it.
Well, it's quite a list, and it's not being facetious in any way, it's almost like someone might like it.
Yes, there are those minerals and things.
You don't want to ingest those things.
So, when you say the tubes are uncovered, and I mean, we knew this was gonna happen since you can't push material over. Do you have any estimates of like the length of tube that's uncovered right now, or the percent of the structure?
I would say about, last time I was out there in front of the tubes looking at them was a few days ago. I was out there on top of the tubes yesterday, but about 50% of the tubes of the face of the second tube first tube's under the beach. About 50% of the second tube and less, a couple patches of the third tube.
I think it would be great to get some photos of that, and also just like a linear footage once a week maybe until the chemical testing is done.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see how it's,
Yep.
if it's progressing
Do that.
severely or kind of.
Sure.
And I guess also just going back to your possible protocol for pushing the material over, and I'm forgetting. Are you proposing to do like a foot a day? How, like, is it gonna be like a 2-week process? Like, I guess a little more detail on that would be nice.
Sure. I mean, the idea was to skim just a little bit at a time off of the top so that as it gets pushed into a windrow and over the edge, it would be a thin layer that comes down that you could, easily identify the material. If you had 2 people there outside of the machine at the same time, and how long would that take?
Yeah, you can't rely on the operator to keep getting out.
No.
So when you're saying this is what you just showed us. What does that mean to us?
Well, I would say
Are we
less.
talking a 6-inch lift?
Yeah, less than a foot, and because as you go, you're just gonna keep picking up a little bit of material and pushing it into a windrow
Okay.
with the blade of the excavator. But I mean, the idea would be to do a thin enough layer that you're able to see what's in it.
Okay, and then this
Yeah,
would
you're
be
not
over a
burying
number of
stuff.
days that this would be.
Probably at least a week, probably maybe 2 weeks.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you. Any other questions or thoughts from the commission?
No. I mean, I suppose we could ask for a video from doing, but I think it's sure they're gonna do a good job.
Video of the skimming part?
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I think we can just, I'm gonna go look. I'm gonna
Yeah,
watch.
exactly.
Yeah, maybe we can I'll do that.
Just you guys don't get to.
No, we don't go there. We don't talk about it.
Okay, thank you for that
Okay.
information.
Great. Do you have any other questions on
I'm
the
gonna open up to the
process?
public,
Okay.
so they might have questions.
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm gonna open this up for public comment. I am gonna remind everybody, please don't repeat yourself to what's already been in the record. Is there anybody that would like to come up and comment or have questions?
So you guys, that was good, the photos, the daily retrieval of the debris, you're gonna continue, it's gonna keep going.
So that condition has to continue
Yeah.
until
Right.
you guys
Until
essentially
we say
release
stop.
Tell
from that.
Until we tell you to stop.
Okay. Hi, Dave. RJ Turcott, Nantucket Land Council. Just have a few points. Number one, SPPF hired a reputable outside expert to address you guys' enforcement order, the commission's enforcement order. I don't really understand why the protocol put forward by OHI is being contradicted by Epsilon. So if OHI thought that it was relevant to test for pH and phosphorus, phosphate, and total nitrogen, I don't really understand why that's not going to be tested for. And if it comes back a crazy number later, then Epsilon SPPF can address it. But if the professional group that was hired said we should test for these, maybe they should test for them.
Mr. Dunk did say that they were being tested for.
Okay.
He
'cause
said that
then-
he had submitted a letter
did.
with some with some justification of why, in his professional opinion, they didn't need to be tested for, but OHI went forward with those tests anyway.
So they're testing for them anyways? Okay.
So everything that we voted on
Yeah.
will be tested this
Okay.
round,
Okay.
even though
That's correct, right.
Epsilon had some questions about some of the tests.
Correct. We did not include those in the original proposal, for the, kind of for the reasons that we suggested. But in talking with the office, those are in your minutes, those are in your motion, so those are being moved forward.
Okay.
So.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, so some additional testing that is required under Mass DEP guidelines for sediment reuse would be testing for total concentrations of PCBs. That's pretty standard practice for sediment that's going to be reused, and in this case is being reused. So that's just minor suggestion. Next thing is, if we want a complete understanding of all the sediment sources, then a sample should be taken to help us isolate where potentially this bad material was coming from. If it's one of the sand pits, and it's going to continue being an issue, and especially if not just Sconset SPPF is using this material and it might be at other sites, it would be relevant to get a sample from the sand pits so that we don't continue to use this contaminated material. And lastly, is it my understanding that the baseline is being taken from the template for material and then directly underneath the template on the beach
Yes.
to compare to for the laboratory samples?
Yes, except the samples will all be compared to established standards that exist.
General standards or
General
standards? Okay.
General standards.
Because just how long this material's been on the beach, even the stuff, if they took it from below in the water, below the mean tide, could have already had runoff, and some of this material could already be there and could skew what the lab results show. So that was just another concern we had. That was it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll just comment on that really quickly. I think if the tests come back and obviously show something of concern or something that's outside of what normal parameters would be, I would think it would be in the commission's best interest to try to source back where those are coming from regardless of spot. So I think that's something where, and I think that would be true with any project, because obviously if there's something that was of concern, to kind of get to the root of the problem once you've established that it's a problem, to kind of track that back. So I would anticipate if the tests come back in a range that are not acceptable, that would probably be the next step to track back to where that would be.
Thank you. Any other questions or concerns from the public? Okay. Any last thoughts from commissioners? We're kind of in a waiting game.
Yeah, we're kind of
Unfortunately.
standing by.
So I guess the question would be, do you want us to carry this discussion on to the next agenda pending the chance that it gets in early and just have it available on the agenda? We obviously have to post our next agenda for a meeting that's 2 weeks from tonight, just to keep it. And then if
something comes in.
if something hasn't come in or there's nothing, we can
If it doesn't,
certainly just
status
carry it
quo.
forward, but just want to make sure that we want to at least have it posted or available per chance something gets in.
Yeah, I think that's good also if we're looking at tubes that are starting to uncover, like to kind of keep track of what's happening.
Can you submit some on that regard?
Once a week,
Yeah.
measure it as you get it.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll carry that discussion forward if that's what you guys are looking to do.
Yeah, I think that's good. So to the 22nd.
Perfect.
Okay.
Just in terms of the PCBs, those probably aren't included in this suite. I know PAHs are, which are similar compound, but I don't know if they're included or not.
Yeah, PCBs are an oily substance. Basically, they are found co-located with silts and silts and clays.
That's what they adhere to.
Pardon me. That's what they adhere to. Not really to the sand particles. The grain size analysis, as we've submitted, everything is pretty much a medium to coarse. Sometimes there's some fine sands with lower amounts of fines. Number one. Number two, when you look at what the sources of PCBs are, it's we have our huge Superfund site in New Bedford, which is
I was the superintendent of that job.
okay. So they had PCB manufacturer in the city, And, you know, so there was issues
Zero
there.
vox.
From most communities such as Nantucket, it would be from a transformer, if a transformer blew or something like that. All those transformers have been changed out to other dielectrics. So, you know, the use of PCB, in the testing for PCBs from this material isn't warranted when in the dredged regulations. It is because we're often talking about dredging of harbors, you know, Boston, Fall River, New Bedford, with industry and a lot of silts in there, so that you have a high concentration of silts and a higher probability of PCBs adhering to that material. So that's why they were not included in this suite of analytes.
Didn't dredging of the Hudson end up putting more PCBs in the environment than they've been stayed on the bottom?
That is always, I've my previous employer for 20 years, I've worked on several Superfund sites, and that's always a question, is for certainly things like that, is it better to cover it in place as opposed to try to remove it? You know, the risk, you look at the benefit risk analysis, so
We were
that can happen.
incinerating it in Bedford
Yeah.
for years.
Okay. So that was the reason that was not included. It's unlikely to be found in, you know, on the Nantucket soil, in Nantucket soils.
Thank you for that explanation. Seth, do you have concerns that we should add that test? Or?
No, I think that explanation is fine.
Okay.
If we start to get samples back that show other contamination, maybe we can
Something that can be
talk about
Yeah.
Some of the other
doing
chemical
some other,
contaminants.
You'll have a sign.
other contaminants, but I think that justification is fine for now.
Okay. All right, so then we're gonna move on and continue this until, okay. You gotta come up and talk into the mic.
Madam Chair, I hope I'm not out of order, but we understood, we checked, Deanne Atherton, the Nantucket Coastal Conservancy. I checked with the office this morning and was told that this matter is part of this agenda item. And what we would like to bring before you is to refer back to a letter we sent to you on December 3rd. And it's, I think it's 159 in the packet for tonight. And this references, it's really tying up a loose end having to do with the reporting requirements that are contained in Special Condition 28. You recall that you found the applicants had met the failure criteria for Special Condition 27 because they had not submitted quarterly reports. At the time, they also acknowledged that they were in arrears in the underwater video monitoring. And at the time you addressed that, it was presented to you that they're all related. But if you go back to the order of conditions, Special Condition 28 is separate. There are two separate conditions. One is 27 for the quarterly reports, and 28 is for the underwater video. So there's no dispute here. They have acknowledged that they have not submitted the underwater video. But we feel that in terms of the record being complete, you need to find that they have met the failure criteria in regard to reporting for the underwater video, which is Special Condition 28. And so we're just asking you to follow through on that so that the record will reflect the information and the evidence that's been submitted to you. And in our letter, we have the wording of both conditions. The underwater video reports are are totally different from the quarterly reports. They are biannual, they are conducted by different consultants, so there's no reason, and they're separate in the order of conditions. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to add that discussion to the next meeting specifically?
For discussing
Special condition
28, yes, we should,
Okay.
yeah,
Let's add that below the other one.
so that we
And
can
we'll
make a
make sure we get
finding.
all that correctly addressed and get you guys all of the specific information.
Yeah, it is 160, page 160 in the packet.
We've been trying to keep it separate, it seems easier to take all the issues individually, because it's a lot of information.
Right, and they did, fully admit to not having these, different surveys and monitoring reports in.
Yep, so we'll just add that to the agenda for that.
Okay. So we will add, monitoring. To the January 22nd meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, so this time I'm really moving on, to reports, crack.
Haven't met, didn't have a quorum.
Okay.
Meeting the 16th.
Alright, CPC is not here, NP and EDC is not here, and we don't have a mosquito control. Commissioners' comments.
Happy New Year.
You too.
Yeah. Alright, administrator staff reports.
Just real quickly, not to be breaking news, but to break news, apparently the select board have appointed, Mr. Beal, Marshall Beal, to the commission, so he'll, I'm sure be joining us soon, and his term runs through, June 30th of 2020, so with us, we're kind of a minimum of at least 5 or 6 months, but I also believe that Ashley's term is the one that's up for
mine's up.
potential appointment this year. So that happened. On a side note from that, we were contacted today by the property owner at 29 Sheep Pond Road, and then kind of subsequently by the Board of Health and the building department. And for those who haven't been following along in the Sheep Pond Road area, this is one of the properties we've been watching for a while, where their driveway had been falling in, they've been losing some things, they lost a section of deck not long ago. They've been endeavoring to give the house away, find somewhere else to put it, and they've gotten to the point now where they have to get rid of it now, or it's gonna leave not in their control. So they came in today and requested an emergency. The corner of their house is less than 10 feet, depending on where you measure from, away. My role as agent, I can issue those out to get them started through the building permit process, but then I just need you guys to ratify that. So we issued that emergency out, so they can kind of continue and get Toscana hopefully moving to do it. They're removing it from the site, it looks like probably in construction dumpster. They couldn't find a place to put it. And to move out of the Sheep Pond area and get it across the bridge.
The bridge is us.
They'd have to cut it up in more pieces than it's worth to put back together. So, it looks like it'll be leaving that way, but, they wanted to get started before it fell in. So, if you guys would like to ratify that, we'll just make a motion to ratify that emergency, and then we'll be going square.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes. Happy New Year. That's all. That's it for tonight.
Alright, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.